pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Conley?
Present.
Councilmember Mobley?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Johnson?
Here.
Mayor Trent?
Here. Okay. First, we have an introduction of a new police dispatcher.
Good morning, Mayor Trent, Honorable City Council. It's my pleasure to be here tonight to introduce the newest member of the Fortuna Police family. Kylie Johnson is with us tonight, and she's bringing some well-needed relief to the Communications Center. As the council knows, over the last year, we've really struggled with our retention and staffing levels in communication, and so this is kind of a special occasion for me because I am just so thankful that you're here. So just a little bit about Kylie is she's a 2019 graduate from Fortuna High School. She was born and raised here in Humboldt County. She's married with a 2-year-old daughter, and she is really active in the community. In fact, she's a volunteer firefighter in Rio Dell, California. And she spends her time as an athlete. She plays some basketball, some hoops, and some volleyball, and she also coaches volleyball at Cuddyback Elementary. So that was kind of some of the personal details that Kylie and I discussed for her introduction tonight. But at this time, before we welcome her as a city, I'd like to turn the podium over to Kylie, and she has a few words for the council.
I just want to thank everybody for the opportunity. It's an honor to be here, and I'm really excited to get started.
Welcome to Fortuna.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, our next item is introduction of our new explosive dog.
Yes, good evening again, Mayor Trent and City Council. So I want to take the opportunity tonight just to kind of introduce an opportunity that we've been looking at for about the last year. As you guys know, Dennis Stevens is one of our patrol canine handlers. And about a year ago, we started talking about kind of a goal of Dennis's was to procure and train an explosives detection dog. And so what we're presenting tonight is an introduction only. This is not a city-funded or budget-funded canine. However, Dennis has procured the canine and conducted the training. He's getting ready to go for post-certs on his own dime. So essentially, Dennis started his own LLC, recognizing that the Humboldt County region had no explosive detection dogs that were available. So this is a huge tool for not only the city but the county. You guys think back a couple of weeks ago in the news, we looked at an explosives threat that was up at the airport and how much time and resources that costed the sheriff's department or the sheriff's office to respond and mitigate that report. And so with a canine like Argus that is trained in multiple different odors that are related to gunpowder or dynamite, plastic explosives, other things that go boom, this really takes, the danger element further out of a situation for officers that would have to be clearing those, or an EOD team that would have to be using time and resource to use a robot. This dog can kind of go into an area and, within a couple of minutes be able to tell the handler whether the dog has detected an odor of an explosive or not. So again, just a really important tool that's now available within the region. Fortuna is looking to finalize an MOU with Dennis. The services will be free to the Fortuna Police Department and the city of Fortuna. And we presented his program and his new partner, Argus, at LICA 2 weeks ago. And I believe he is in the process of also finalizing an MOU with the sheriff's office. So I just wanted to make you aware of what the program looks like. Again, we're in the process of finalizing that MOU. So nothing's set in stone or done yet. We have some policy issues to look at as well and change. But I also wanted to give Dennis the opportunity to come up here for 2 or 3 minutes, introduce Argus, and just kind of talk about what he's done and where he plans on going.
What language does this one speak?
What's that?
What language does this one speak?
He's trained in Czech, so I don't get confused.
Okay.
So just like Kane's trained in Czech, he is as well. He's 18-month-old, sourced out of Texas. And I started his training in January. January 15th is when I picked him up. So it's been an uphill battle trying to make sure that I can spend my spare time trying to fill the hole that I identified, that we lacked that in the canine program. All other agencies chose to go with other canine specialties other than an explosive detection. So with that, I've imprinted them on 14 different explosive odors. Of those 14 explosive odors, they compose about 19,000 different explosive combinations. So we're working on getting our certification done, hopefully by the end of the month or before the middle of July. Hopefully before the middle of July, where we can go and do our post-certification with the same certifier, same assessment that goes for our other dogs. Kane and Blitz, he'll be going with the same post-evaluator. So we'll get that done, and hopefully my target is before the end of the month, but realistically probably before the middle of July, where I can have him post-certified and will be an available resource. So I just wanted to come here, take a little bit of time, introduce him, and let you know where we're trying to go with it, and that I think it's going to be a real valuable resource for the community.
Does he go in by himself, or do you go with him?
So there's several different ways, several different modes that we can do. He is trained off lead, but he's also trained on lead. So depending on what we have and what we know, we would make a decision whether he goes off lead or on lead. So as long as I can hear him, I can tell what he's doing. So even if he goes around the corner, I can tell what he's smelling, what he's doing. Oh, sorry, sir. I had a lot of training aids in this room, so he believes that there's something here he should find.
So
I appreciate the time.
how does he tell you that he's found something?
He has a standard passive alert where he will. No, that's not it. Hey, if he does that and looks at me, we're in trouble.
Oh.
No, that's his alert that he's found a trained odor and that he's expecting his reward for it.
Uh-huh. Okay.
What kind of dog is he?
He is a purebred fox red lab. He came out of Maker Canine from Texas. So and the guy presented him to me and said, he's an excellent dog and he is a man of his word.
He looked like a lab, but I just couldn't figure out what kind.
Yeah, fox red is the color, which kind of throws people off because they think he's a mix with golden. So, okay. Hey,
Thank you.
thank you very much.
Thank you.
What do you got hidden, Sean? Oh, okay, so oops. Our next item is prioritizing essential services in the era of natural disaster.
All right. Good evening, Mayor Trent, City Council, City staff. Sean Quincy with the County Administrative Office. I believe this is the first time I'm presenting to this body, so I do just quickly want to share a little bit about myself, if that's all right. Originally from San Diego, came up here in early 2002 to go to Humboldt State, studied journalism, early childhood, played some football. Been here ever since, except for a year, working in journalism for both newspapers, the Eureka Reporter from way back in the day, if you can remember those days. Time Standard, worked in early childhood, actually down the road at the Ferndale Children's Center for a year. But I've been at the county for the last 12 years doing work in the county administrative office, working on management, budget, legislative policy, and that's what brings me here today. But before I do that, I want to give Tom a chance to introduce himself.
Sure. Tom Matson, Director of Public Works. I came up to Humboldt County in '86 to go to Humboldt State to get my engineering degree. Left in 1990 to find a job, came back in '92, and have been here ever since. Started with the county in '98 and been there 26 years now. And I live just south of Fortuna.
And it's been a pleasure to work with you, Mayor Trent, Chief Day, and others on Measure Z processes. That's where we do a lot of interfacing, so I want to acknowledge that also. On to the reason that we're here today is to talk about natural disasters and the impact that it's having on our community. So over the last 10 years plus, we've seen an uptick in natural disasters. Tom can go into a little bit of the history that he's had with natural disasters, but we've definitely seen them happening more frequently. The disasters run the gamut from earthquakes, fires, floods, winter storms, landslides even down at Fleener Creek we saw earlier this year. Some of those disasters affect specific sections of our community, and some affect our entire county as a whole. Regardless, when the emergencies hit, the county, cities, and to a lesser extent, less often extent, the state and federal government declare emergencies. And as you all are well aware, a declaration of emergency is a public statement saying that our government does not have the resources to respond to this emergency. And for the county, these emergencies, these constant rolling emergencies are taking a toll. And as we continue working on the budget and working on a sustainable plan for the future, we're here to talk to you about where we may be headed in the future. The issues are significant, they're structural, and under the status quo, we simply don't have enough funding to continue to deal with these sustainably. And I want to be frank and honest with this council is that one of the potential solutions is increased local revenue, potentially a tax measure. A sales tax measure is what our board has directed us to continue to work on, and that's what we're continuing to communicate about, survey the community about, but I wanted to put that out there at the beginning of this presentation so that you are aware of where this could be headed for the November ballot. But the rest of the presentation will be devoted to explaining how we got here and the impact that we're seeing in Humboldt. Oh, I gotta turn this on, you said. Take a minute. Please help.
Upside down.
No, it's on. Yeah.
Pull the battery out, spin it.
Oh, there we go. Thank you. So how we got here, the story for us starts at the state level. Over the last 30 plus years, the state has taken away more than $500 million from the county's general fund. This has come in the form of property tax reallocation. Back in the early 90s, the state couldn't meet its obligations, and so they made a dramatic shift in the way that our local property taxes were allocated. Each year, the amount that equals for us grows and grows, and over this past year was $25 million that would have otherwise gone to the county's general fund. These are local funds that are meant to address local needs, and the state has mandated that those funds go to state obligations. These are reportable numbers maintained by our auditor controller's office, and so that's, as I said, that's a shift in the way that the state has mandated that those funds are allocated. As you are likely well aware, the state is facing a record deficit between $37 and $73 billion, depending on who you ask to tally up the numbers. These are how these things happen. Like I said, back in the 90s when the state was facing extreme budget deficits, they turned to local governments to fill their coffers. And that's what we're trying to protect against this year. We've already seen the governors may revise proposals to take away hundreds of millions of dollars in emergency preparedness and transportation funding. And we're likely to see this cycle continue to repeat itself each year that the state continues to be in this budget deficit. And as we continue to investigate this, it just becomes self-evident that we need guaranteed sources of local revenue that the state cannot take away in order to meet our local needs. There we go. And we're not alone in recognizing that the county needs to do more to prepare for natural disasters. You may have seen the grand jury, they just issued, I think, their third report this year, but last year they issued a report on the county's services as it relates to emergency preparedness. And they stated very plainly in that report that the county needs to do more to prepare for emergencies. They cite that our area, due to our topography and other conditions, we're just susceptible to a lot of these catastrophes. And sea level rise and climate change is exacerbating the impacts of sea level rise on our community. We have the highest rate of sea level rise, I believe, in the state. So if I can leave kind of one piece with this body, is that we just simply believe that natural disasters are the new normal for us. They're changing. It's changing our everyday lives. We know that they're coming. They know that more are going to come, and we believe they could be even more serious down in the future. And for the county, we're feeling most of the impacts on our county roads. The disasters impact our residents' ability to evacuate safely from areas when the roads wash out. It impacts our ability to deliver commerce as well. We simply live in an area where the impacts of disasters significantly affect roads in comparison to other infrastructure. And this slide mentions hardening and upgrading our roads, and I want to hand it off to Tom about what that means, because by and large, when disasters come up, we hear a lot that state and federal funding is supposed to be the magic bullet, but for so many reasons, I'm sure that city manager, public works folks, and this body knows it's definitely not the magic bullet.
So Sean talked a little bit about the increasing scale. When I started in February of 1998, in March of 1998, I've experienced my first disaster management with the first declared storm disaster. Being young and not very smart, I looked back on history, and it turned out the county had a disaster declaration on average of every 3 years. But there's a fun correlation is every time there's a disaster in December, there was a following one 80% of the time in March. And that's due to just that heavy winter pattern we would get. And so that was, once every 3 years average, we could deal with that. 2017 hit, we got hit with $41 million of damage to our road system. 2019 hit, we got hit with another $15 million of damage. Between 2022 and 2024, we had 4 declared disasters, 3 due to winter storms, 1 due to an earthquake, to another $15 million. So I'm sitting out $70 million on a $15 million annual budget. We talk about the reimbursement. Yes, FEMA comes in. We got a check. It's blank. We usually don't get approval to do a project for 3 years after the site is damaged. We get the approval to do emergency opening, which is basically the absolute minimum to get traffic through. And then we have to go through the federal process to get contracts, proper designs, authority to bid right away. And then after we do all that, this is with all the county money up front. It takes 6 to 10 years after the project's closed to get that money reimbursed. So right now, my county roads budget is sitting in a $10 million cash flow hole waiting for reimbursements. And the way the reimbursements work through the federal government is when they come out and say we have $8 billion for this storm, it's actually not for that storm. About 10% of that money goes to the existing disaster. 90% of that money goes to back pay all the local agencies across the United States for prior disasters. And so that is their mechanism for paying us. So I'm hoping they're going to declare, because of the tornadoes a couple of weeks ago, because that will mean that Humboldt County will probably get a check out of the balance. But they do not pay on a timely manner. And again, they only pay when they declare a new disaster or they create new legislation. So it creates a severe problem for county roads. That's a cycle, because I have to use my maintenance money to pay for the storm damage. Therefore, I can't maintain my roads, and they start to deteriorate even more rapidly. Going into 2017, we did have $1 million reserve set up for storms. That money is all gone at this point. When we try to harden our roads, it is extremely hard to get the federal government to pay for anything but putting it back the way it was. Well, if we put it back the way it was, there's a reason it failed. And so I'll give you an example. Is I have a project right now on the border of Riodale on Monument Road, half in the city, half in the county. We did an initial estimate of $1.4 million. We asked for a geotechnical evaluation, which sometimes they will fund. They agreed to fund it. The geotech came back and said, you need to change your design. It needs to be a $2.4 million project. We went to FEMA and they said, no, that's too much. We'll give you the 1.4. And so guaranteed to fail again, and next time it will cost $2.5 million. So instead of spending $2.5 million once, we're spending $2.5 million plus $1.4 million. But I can't let the road not be usable. This is an example of a Bear Road this winter. The residents out there, there were 2 accesses. Both of them got damaged. They were stranded for about 2 weeks, and we had to get in and open these roads. I just talked about the reimbursement. It's not predictable. Like I say, we never know when the check is going to come, so I can't bank on it. That rolls into our pavement condition index. The county and all the cities regularly do a review of the condition of our paved roads. Yours are much better than the county roads, by the way. A few years ago, we were up in the blue with the 44 counties, pretty much trying to hold our own as semi-decent roads. You know, it's on average. We got some really bad roads, some really good roads, but on average, we were fair. But because of all the storms and the inability for me to properly maintain our roads, we have now dropped down into the poor condition. And based on existing funding, we're expected to be in a very, very poor condition within the next 10 years without enhancement of funding. So for an example, this is a PCI of 100, a brand new road. This is what the average county road looked like probably 8 to 10 years ago. This is what they're looking like now, and this is where they're going. Delaying maintenance only increases costs in the long run. So most of our roads will be failed if we don't do something within the next 10 years. You know, we know what we need. We know we're not going to get the $500 million we need to get up to a PCI of 70 in 10 years, but we've got to start somewhere. And why you want to be at a PCI of 70 is that's your cheapest operational cost to maintain your roads. It's like replacing your roof before your ceiling caves in. It's a lot cheaper to do the roof than the whole ceiling. And that's where we want to get back to eventually. The cost to get there is extensive. The value of the county road system is well over $1 billion as an asset in value to the county. And with that, I'll turn it back to Sean for the rest of the community priorities.
Do want to also note that slide that showed that had the graph of the PCIs for different counties. All of the counties that are up in the green area there, each of those counties has at least one source of local revenue to maintain their roads. Some of them have multiple sources of local revenue, so it's not a surprise that more revenue means better service. This slide is here because this leads us to our ask of this council and our community. Last summer, we went out and we polled the community through phone and computer text messages, try to do a scientific poll of about 600 likely voters. And these were the top ranking priorities that those respondents responded to the survey with. This was all done in preparation for potential placement of a revenue measure in March. As you can see, there's a disparate set of services there, ranging from maintaining 911 response to repairing roads, leveraging additional funding, transportation, climate action, and homeless service. And we simply don't have enough funding to provide all of those services. And what we want to do at this point is that we want to get really granular on what the community values among these top priorities. So we have a survey online right now that we're asking the community to fill out. It's on the county's homepage. You can just go to humboldtgov.org and fill out the survey. It's pretty short. But that's the ask right now, is to ask community to fill out the survey. And we're also asking this body and others if there are other community groups that you feel would benefit from hearing this message and asking questions of us. We would love to get that feedback from you all. But with that, there's the website, QR code, all that stuff. Everybody should be receiving a piece of mail here also later this week, possibly between Wednesday and Friday, with a lot of the same information, asking folks to take the survey. But with that, I'll turn it over to you. We are happy to answer any questions that you might have. And thank you for having us.
Of course. Is this a general tax?
More than likely, yeah. In the fall or in the summer last year with that poll that we mentioned, it polled at about 57% support, and so it's not enough to get up to the two-thirds measure, 66% support for a special revenue measure. We've been tracking ACA 1, that's the measure, the statewide measure that could go on the ballot that would lower the voting threshold for some of these special revenue taxes for things like housing, roads infrastructure. That's, I hear that, excuse me, I hear that that has not been polling well, so I'm not sure if that's going to make it onto the ballot.
So if this passes and you say it's for roads and then somebody comes in and wants a whole new homeless housing, could it be used for that?
So this would go to the county's general fund, so it could be at the board's discretion, yes. Similar, and that is the reason why these surveys are so important. This is the same process that we went through with Measure Z, asking the community to identify their priorities, and we identify those priorities in the ballot language and the resolution. Those are really our guiding documents to hold our county accountable to. If I may say so, I believe that our board has done a lot of work to hold true to the intent of Measure Z. We did a lot of work, as you know, Mayor Trent, in this past year to make sure that the county is upholding the values that were expressed in that measure. And so personally, I have a lot of confidence in that process and the way that our board has responded. But yes, technically, we go into the general fund. That's why these surveys are important, to express the desires of the voters through the ballot measure and the resolution.
Okay. One more question. This is supposed to be mainly for roads, right?
It'll depend on the community's priorities. But like I said, the county, what we have felt most of the impacts, we felt most of the impacts of the natural disasters on roads. And we also know that transportation funding has also been threatened, and that's also been identified as a community priority as well.
Okay. And so if this passes, will some of the funding that goes to roads to Measure Z be transferred to this and open up more money in Z?
I would imagine, and maybe Tom could answer that question better.
So for this, we would want to set up a separate committee that really looked at the language, a finance type committee, and made sure that whatever was proposed for this was being spent on it. And, you know, if I'm getting a lot of money out of this, I'm not going to be going for Measure Z, because police and fire really need that money just as much as roads. And if I have the separate measure that I'm getting a lot of money from, that, yes, I would back off from Measure Z.
Okay. Anybody have any questions? No?
I'd just say, I noticed in your polling in the questions that maintaining infrastructure for police, fire, medical, you can have all the phone lines and radio communications in the world, but if you can't get to the person, you haven't got anything. So that infrastructure is also roads, so.
Yeah, the evacuation routes in different communities, it's interesting because we've seen a lot of our main state highways go out. You can't get out north, you can't get out east, you can't even get out south sometimes. The evacuation routes to actually get out of this community are all local roads. They're all maintained local roads going out through Neeland or other places, and we simply don't have enough funding because of these natural disasters that we're putting out money to Band-Aid up these places where the roads have failed, and that takes our money away from maintaining some of these essential roads, including the evacuation routes.
Just to tie in on that, in 1964 flood, the only way in and out of the county on the ground was Bell Springs Road, a county-maintained road that split between Mendocino and Humboldt County. For 100 days, that was the only way in and out.
So will this committee have a separate advisory committee like Measure Z does?
That would be our recommendation, is that we have an oversight committee.
Okay. No other questions? Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, now oral comments from the public. Anybody would like to or talk about anything that's not on the agenda, and you have 3 minutes.
Hey guys, I've got a few comments on the water and sewer rate proposed increase. I'm not sure if I should wait for the agenda item you guys have about the...
And there's not one tonight for that, but so now would be the appropriate time for this
Okay.
evening's discussion.
Okay, so anyway, hi, I'm Abe. I'm a local resident and business owner. Had a few comments regarding the notice I got about the proposed increases. I'm not sure if it's even too late to affect, how the rate structure is going to look. And I'm sure you're probably going to get like a lot of comments from other people, that are, have concerns about the, the size of the rate increase. But I'm not going to be here for the whatever July 1st meeting. So I just wanted to kind of take this opportunity just to kind of share my own thoughts. I think and I don't dispute that. I'm sure there's, the need for, the rate increase and all the improvements that are going to be needed in the future. But I think the couple things that stood out to me were the rate for 1-inch water connections, or not necessarily the connection fee, but the actual just monthly rate for residential use. Seems like a lot of newer homes, that have residential fire sprinklers have to have a 1-inch connection, but they don't have any more plumbing fixtures inside the house. So I kind of felt that the price difference between a 1-inch meter and the 3/4-inch meter for residential didn't seem to be justified to me. I know the report said it was supposed to be to cover the anticipated demand of the larger meter. My gut feeling is that the potential demand of someone having a fire that would require the fire sprinklers to utilize that extra water is probably doesn't justify the $500 a year extra cost increase. Excuse me. And then one other just observation, just kind of related to, I guess, the connection fee for like new construction. I think historically where a lot of houses, same line of logic where they used to be able to get by with a 3/4-inch meter that now requires a 1-inch meter, I think, is going to, have a lot of impacts for affordable housing, and, it just seems like a big jump. So anyway, just wanted to share those thoughts and appreciate your time.
Thank you.
I actually wanted to make comment on the presentation, and I don't know if now's the time, or did you not have public comment on that? Or is now okay?
No, yeah. go
Okay,
ahead.
so thank you. Hi, Mayor and Council. I want to encourage the council to take the survey and to also encourage your constituents. The questions that you asked, Mayor Trent, are going to be poised to the board and would be board decision on all of those. And so it would be very helpful for our board with those survey results so that we know nobody wants taxes at all. And there's going to be a lot on this coming ballot, I feel, in November. And so for our board to make those decisions on how to structure that tax or whether to go forward, it's really important to do that survey so that we can have that information and make really good decisions. So I just really want to encourage people to do that.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Any other comments? Go ahead.
Good evening. My name is Fred Robinson. I just wanted to come and talk on behalf of potential changes to Parks and Rec Department. I've been part of conversations of potentially charging for field usage in the future, and I would just like to encourage our board against it. I can tell you that the organizations that use our parks have all of their expenses going up already. I get it's a tight budget. We have some of the most accessible and best parks, in my opinion, in the county. I'm the assistant district administrator for District 26 Little League, which is the entire county. and I see some of the leagues throughout the county that are being charged and have to pay to use the fields, they have to pass those costs on to the people using it. It's a tight budget, not only for the municipalities, but also for
Can
families.
I interrupt just a
Yeah.
second? We actually have that item on the agenda, and
that-
if you wait until we do that, we can respond, otherwise we can't talk about it. Is that correct?
I think these are of a general nature regarding MOUs and not the fee schedule, so it's probably appropriate to hear this during public comment because we're not talking about MOUs, and I think what Fred's alluding to is potential changes to MOUs, which are down the road a little ways. And
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, so just more in a general nature. I'm just afraid that families will lose access to different sports and activities by charging more. Insurance, I can tell you, for Little League has gone up considerably. They've done everything they can to try to limit. The local Little League serves over 500 kids throughout the Eel River Valley, and yet we're having declining numbers. Most of the other Little Leagues have dropped their T-ball and coach pitch, which is 4-, 5-, and 6-year-old, which are some of the most used for park access, because those are the ones that grandmas and grandpas come and watch the most, I've found. So I just hope there's a way that can be looked at when MOUs are being discussed in the future, of how that might be able to be preserved so we can keep access. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor Trent, if I could just make one comment. This will be coming into the council in the future, and what we're trying to do is really, we have the whole range of user groups, some that pay their entirety of their field use fee and others that use the fields with no maintenance and don't pay anything. So we're working to come up with a strategy, and we'll make sure to bring something to the council, but we really want to make sure that we don't discourage some of our sports leagues from being there. We know how much they're valued, and we want to make sure that we continue to support those leagues and have those opportunities for our youth. So we appreciate their effort, and we will be bringing some back to the council probably within the next 8 weeks, I would think.
Okay.
Can we ask Merritt to clarify the first speakers? Can you clarify that? We've talked about it in public meeting before, that connection fee.
Brendan might be able to clarify. So just for the record, I know we're not considering an item, but I think what you're alluding to is that houses with a 1-inch meter that's needed for fire are typically charged the 3/4. But Brendan, would you like to clarify how that is charged to Councilmember Conley?
Yeah, to speak to the item number 2, the connection fees for new construction, as we've discussed it a time or two before, but on a new residential building permit that requires a 1-inch meter only for the fire sprinkler, so for a single family residence, we do only charge the 3/4 inch meter cost. So the costs, they would be projected to go up, of course, with the rate study we're talking about now, but it wouldn't go out of that 1-inch class. That would still fall back into the 3/4 inch connection fee, which is what we charge for those ones in there. As it goes to the other meter sizes as a monthly fee, all of those classes increase proportionally. So if you live in one class right now as a 1-inch meter or a 3/4 inch meter or a 1.5 inch meter, all of those move up at the same proportion, and one not more than the other in the residential scale. So just some points of clarification.
Thank you. Okay, any other public comments? Okay, seeing none, we'll close public comment. And we'll go to consent calendar. We have 5 items. City council meetings from minutes from May 20th, city council minutes from May 29th, report of disbursements, call for a municipal election to be held on November 5th, 2024, establishing council election policy and request consolidation with the County of Humboldt Resolution 2024-14 and annual military equipment report, Assembly Bill 481. Council want to pull any of those? Any public comment on any of those? Okay, then do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve consent calendar items A through E.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion, a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Moving to city business. Approve the fiscal year 2024-2025 5-year capital improvement program. Staff report.
Yes, thank you, Honorable Mayor and City Council. Brennan Bird, City Engineer, Public Works Director. I'm here to present our final draft 2024-2025 fiscal year capital improvement program, something that we also refer to as the CIP, as the acronym for that. So a quick background as a refresher to folks on the council, but also to the public tuning in. So what is a capital improvement program, or a CIP? It really is a planning tool that we use as a local agency, and most local agencies use, to help plan, identify, budget, and ultimately deliver various infrastructure projects that are within our jurisdiction. That includes projects such as water, sewer, roads, storm drain, buildings and facilities, pretty much everything that we have responsible charge for from an infrastructure perspective. It's an annual undertaking that we do every year in line with our city budgeting process. And realistically, we sit down at the department level across all departments and figure out what our needs are, what our maintenance needs are, what our capital needs are for improvements, what our capacity increasing needs are, you name it. And we prioritize those projects and needs. We look at an implementation schedule over 5 years. We develop and we plan for costs, and we figure out ultimately how we're going to deliver those improvements to the community. And the first year of the CIP, or the year we go into with the fiscal year in this case, which is 24-25, those costs and those projects also get incorporated into that fiscal year's budget, which is why we are here this evening as well, presenting the budget in a few items later on. So a quick recap. Like I said, we do this every year. So this slide right here is intended to show or highlight the big activity from one year over the next. So as we'll get to in further detail in a few slides here, this proposed CIP, the 24-25 CIP, includes removing 7 projects that we've completed over the previous fiscal year, and we've also added 3 new projects to the capital improvement program. I will note that last Tuesday, the 28th, we also took the capital improvement program to the Planning Commission, and they did make a finding that all new projects, in addition to the previous projects that were in the CIP, are consistent with the city's general plan and further advance the general plan policy goals contained therein. I do want to highlight one project really briefly, because this is a change that was not highlighted in the staff report that you reviewed for this business item. And it is different than what was presented at the special budget workshop in May, and that is we did change the budgeted estimated price on the River Lodge exterior stain project from $35,000 to $150,000. This isn't a budgeted activity. We don't have a funding source identified now, but due to some recent cost estimates that we received from some contractors to stain the entirety of the facility, we felt the need to up that to, again, reflect the true cost of the improvement that's going to be needed to be made, at some point in the relatively near future. Again, it doesn't impact the budget or what's being presented as part of the budget item, but just wanted to make sure the council was aware because it wasn't clearly called out in the staff report. So jumping back into the projects that were completed this last fiscal year and have since been removed from the CIP, there were 7 overall. I won't go into a tremendous amount of detail on any of them, but if there are any questions, happy to answer those at the end or even after this slide. We did installation of emergency generator at the city's corporation yard. We recoded 2 of the city's main water storage facilities, steel water storage facilities. We completed our storm drain infrastructure vulnerability assessment, which is a planning document used to plan for our storm drain replacements. We completed the Prop 1 LID project along 12th Street. We installed 2 new emergency water system generators, one on our Canmar and one on our Drake Hill water booster station. We completed the construction of the Roner Park basketball court project, and we completed installation of a new roof at the city's corporation yard on Dinsmore Drive. There are a number of funds and budgets and information shown on the slide, but the one key one I'd like to point out is actually the column on the far right, which shows the percent variance. This is the difference between our original budgeted estimate for the project versus the actual delivery cost. I will note for all 7 projects that are leaving the CIP this year due to completion, they all came in at or below the projected budget. So moving on to projects that were, got a little ahead of myself, or behind myself, I guess. Projects that were added in 24-25. So as I noted, there were 3, and All three that were added this year are all more standard maintenance-related projects. The city has a lot of big projects going with the interchange, designs that we're trying to advance at Kenmar and 12th Street, with the wastewater project and a number of other larger utility and infrastructure projects. We felt the need to kind of add in and identify more of those regular routine maintenance projects, and that's what you see here in front of you. We have two at the city's wastewater treatment plant. It's the rehabilitation of a junction box used for our wastewater influent coming to the plant, in addition to some metal rehabilitation in one of the city's two secondary clarifiers. Lastly, we want to add an annual maintenance project to replace valve clusters on the water system. We do a similar annual maintenance approach with our concrete and our paving contracts, and we'd like to set up an annual funding amount to where we can identify valve clusters in areas that require rehabilitation or replacement, and to be able to get contractor services. A lot of the times replacing those requires some extra equipment and some extra expertise that our crews don't have. So with that, there was one project that was really close to making our 7 projects completed soon, an 8th project, and that's the city's police facility, the new police facility at 2600 Newburgh Road. I thought it would be a good opportunity to provide an update on that project in this setting, just to inform the council and the community. The project, insofar as the construction contract with Sequoia Construction, is very, very close to complete. Just a few minor items on the punch list today, and I actually removed several of them, so now we're down to just the very last few. We are working diligently right now on a lot of the IT work on the inside, outfitting security cameras and internet and phones, things of that nature, and we do hope in the coming weeks that we will be doing a transition of our PD staff down to that facility. So although the flurry of activity that's more noticeable on the outside has been a little quiet in the last couple of months, there's been routine and regular progress on the inside, doing maybe what is a little bit less glamorous, but every bit as important in making it a functioning police facility. And just briefly to jump back on that, to provide another update, the council may remember that in late 2023, we did bring a supplemental budget request for that project to cover a number of anticipated change orders. We still are fully within that budget amount. Happy to report that everything is going to be covered under what we had previously projected at that SBR. So a quick look ahead, just to provide some additional information on projects that we are either in progress on right now or anticipate being under construction over the next year. I'll go over these briefly again. If there's any questions, I'm happy to answer. The city started the CDBG ADA barrier removal project actually last Tuesday after Memorial Day. REO Construction mobilized and began replacing sidewalks and curb ramps on N Street between 11th and 14th. We are probably a couple of months away from our contractor, Merce Fraser, mobilizing to complete our P Street sewer replacement project, which the council authorized award of, I believe, in April. Staff is working on our bid package for our sanitary sewers CCTV and condition assessment project. Staff is active right now in a number of storm damage repair projects that took place in the storms that the county received and the city included in January and March. We have a number of storm drain maintenance projects currently underway under our annual storm drain maintenance project. One of them actually in active work right now is a culvert on Elizabeth Barkus. And lastly, we have a number of additional paving and concrete rehabilitation projects planned for the fall and the spring. As community members have probably seen, we were active in some rehabilitation paving on the boulevard and on Ronerville Road in the last few months. We do have some locations planned on Kenmar Road and on Newburgh Road, among others, for some additional pavement rehab. So jumping over into a few graphs to end the presentation here. So this is a budget summary pie chart from the CIP, and this looks at where the city's expenditures are by fund over the next 5 years for the entirety of the CIP. As the council will see, right now the lion's share of that goes to what we anticipate is sewer projects, and that is almost entirely tied up in the city's wastewater treatment plant upgrade project. But additionally to that are a number of other sewer rehabilitation projects that we are also working on there. So that certainly represents the lion's share of our efforts and our financial liability over the next 5 years from a project perspective. That's followed by a number of large projects we have planned in the water system, specifically on the water distribution side, and then a number of grant-related projects. Right now, that lives largely with the grant funding, the State Transportation Improvement Program dollars we've received to advance the Kenmar and the 12th Street interchange projects. So for this next budget year, the 24-25 budget, again, which Aaron will be going over in a few items here, these are the costs for the CIP that will be included in that budget. As the council will see, actually over this coming year, grants and projects that are grant funded are our largest expenditure in the CIP over this coming year. That includes advancement of the Kenmar Interchange Project, the 12th Street Interchange Project, and the Mill Creek Habitat Connectivity Project. Cumulatively, I believe we had upwards of $4.6 million in total grant funding for those three efforts, some of which has been expended, and that's why it shows less in this particular graph right here. In addition to that, we have a number of sewer projects, advancing the design of our wastewater treatment plant upgrade project, but also working on some maintenance and rehabilitation work in the collection system, in addition to work at the wastewater treatment plant. And then a number of projects in our water reserve fund. So those are water main, water line replacements. And then Measure E, that is our Newburgh Park expansion project. And then lastly, and I promise I'll be done. This graph right here shows our expenditures for this coming year by the phase of work we're doing. So as the council can see, 85% of the dollars that we plan to expend this year are going towards constructing improvements, and about 15% of those dollars are going towards planning or engineering related activities. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions, and I really appreciate the time. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from council?
Mayor Trent, if I could just make one comment. I want to say Brendan and Matt in our Public Works Engineering Department deserve a lot of credit, as well as our division heads, Andy, Bob, Nat. And it's really hard to stay on top of that many projects, especially when you have projects of the magnitude of our wastewater treatment project, which has been moving along for quite some time. The police facility project, which could probably suck an employee almost full-time just to manage that project. And it really is a testament to the good work and the diligence to be able to not only take care of the projects that are in construction, but looking at the different ones you're trying to plan ahead and get a CIP done. So there's a huge amount of work for a very small department, and Brendan deserves a lot of credit for keeping all those projects going. And I just wanted to, it's probably unheard of to have just that few staff and have this many projects going at one time.
Thank you. Thank you, Brendan. No questions here. Okay, we'll open public comment. Anybody in the audience have any questions? Seeing none, we'll close public comment.
I'll make a motion to adopt fiscal year 24-25 five-year capital improvement program and appropriate funding and inclusion of fiscal year 24-25 projects into the 24-25 overall budget.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion, a second. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Conley?
Aye.
Councilmember Mobley?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Johnson?
Yes.
Mayor Trent?
Yes. Okay, motion passes. Our next item is a public hearing to consider the adoption of the rates and fees for city services, Resolution 2024-12. Staff report, please.
Yeah, good evening, Honorable Mayor and City Council. So tonight we have about half of the fee schedule. We're going to be going over the administrative fee schedule, the Parks and Rec fee schedule, and the Police Department fee schedule. The other half of the fee schedule will be coming in conjunction with our water and sewer rate public hearing on July 1st. So staff did present the proposed budget at a special council workshop on May 2nd. And so I'm just going to briefly describe the changes that we went through at that special workshop. So in the administrative fee schedule, we're adding a business license reprint fee of $5. In the parks fee schedule, we're removing the language of what exempt events were going to be included, and we're going to be replacing those with individual MOUs that will be coming forward in the next 8 weeks, as the city manager explained. Included in the recreation fee schedule was a $10 non-resident fee for our youth basketball program, and then the removal of the basketball camp from the fee schedule until that program gets up and running again. In the police fee schedule, there's one item to add a renewal permit under the solicitor's permit of $100. In the River Lodge and Monday Club fee schedule, they removed the outside use only fee for the River Lodge. They decreased the charge for catering. They removed the staff expense since they're short-staffed right now and they can't provide that service. Additionally, they restricted the nonprofit pricing to only nonprofit groups that are putting on ceremonial performances, and so all other nonprofits will be charged the normal rate moving forward. They increased the linen costs, and they also removed the exempt events language, and we'll be replacing those with individual MOUs in the coming council meetings. And then the final change was to the transit fee schedule, and that was to increase the senior bus fares by 50 cents per ride and $7.50 per 15 rides in order to get closer to our fare box recovery ratio. So as mentioned, the building, community development, and water wastewater fees will be brought forward for adoption at the July 1st council meeting in conjunction with the Prop 218 public hearing. And so it is staff's recommendation to adopt Resolution 2024-12 and adopt the 24-25 proposed fees. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions from council? Okay, we'll open public comment. Any questions? None? Okay, we'll close public comment. Back to council.
I'll make a motion to adopt Resolution 2024-12 and read by title only.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Roll call vote, please.
Resolution 2024-12, a resolution of the City of Fortuna establishing a schedule of fees and charges for administrative, parks, recreation, police, River Lodge and Monday Club, and transit within the City of Fortuna for fiscal year 2024-2025. Councilmember Conley?
Aye.
Councilmember Mobley?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Johnson?
Yes.
Mayor Trent?
Yes. Okay, let's see. Our next item is adoption of the fiscal year 2024 budget, Resolution 2024-13. Staff report, please.
Yeah, thank you again, Honorable Mayor and City Council. So I do have a short presentation on the proposed budget as a recap from what took place at our special budget workshops on May 2nd and May 8th. And so just as an overview for public consumption, the budget was presented at both workshops, and the primary focus was on 5 principles. And so the first one was to keep current services at existing levels to the highest degree possible. This budget achieves that. We did not have to cut any services that were provided in previous years from this budget. The budget will comply with state constitution, city charter, and municipal code provisions. We were able to achieve that. One of the additions that you'll see at the end of the proposed budget is our appropriations limit. Once again, the city is well below the appropriations limit that the state imposes upon the city, so we're in good shape there. Working capital balances will be examined to ensure balances are healthy enough to protect the city from any future uncertainties. All of our funds that we went through with the council meet our minimum reserve policy, and some of them have a little additional to be used. So that has been met. The fourth one, staff will strive to balance recurring expenditures with recurring revenues. I'll be going through the general fund, but we were able to successfully put forward a general fund budget that had a small surplus, so we achieved that. And then finally, department budgets will be developed to reflect the best estimates possible for the true cost of operations. So we really try and drill our departments down to exactly what they need in order to achieve the certain levels of service that we expect. So here's just a short recap of kind of where our general fund revenues go. So property tax in lieu is a big portion. The biggest portion is sales tax. We get about $2.2 million from sales tax. I'm going to highlight kind of where our sales tax trends are in the next slide. Our transient occupancy tax, those are a hotel tax. We're seeing a nice little increase with that revenue. Franchise fees, as PG&E increases their rates, we see an increase in our franchise fees. from those franchises. Business licenses is about the same. Parks and recreation fees, we do have an increase in there. That does take into account some potential increases with future MOUs that we'll be bringing forward to the council on field use. So that could, be subject to some fluctuation here, depending on how those MOUs are adopted. Police fees increased due to our increased personnel costs for dispatch fees. We had to pass those along to some of our surrounding agencies, so that's what that $58,000 increase was for. And then the transfer in for Measure E, that increased about $60,000. We continue to rely heavily on Measure E in order to balance our general fund budget. And then the final other, that primarily includes our investment revenue. We've seen the highest rates on our investments over the past 15 years, so a $77,000 increase in our investment revenue there. So I wanted to highlight sales tax. Sales tax, which we also call Bradley Burns, as well as our Measure E, which is our transaction and use tax, make up almost 50% of our revenue in the general fund and Measure E fund combined. So sales tax is one of the closest monitored revenue sources in the city because of that. And so what we saw in our most recent sales tax data from fourth quarter was that our sales tax increased 1.6% quarter over quarter, which is good that it went up, but below historical levels of about 3 to 4%. But what we also saw was the county was down 3.2% and the state was down 2.5%. So that shows a larger trend in our surrounding county and state that sales tax is definitely in a decline. And so when we looked into that, we saw that we had one business that really propped up Fortuna for fourth quarter 2023 and allowed us to have an increase of 1.6%. Otherwise, we would have been negative, just like the county and state. So this shows our 13-quarter trend. You can see the trend is negative. And so this is an alarming trend for the city. We want to see that to start to reverse itself and go back up towards the 3 to 4% area. On the expense side, I just wanted to highlight the large increases due to inflation that the city has seen. So we've seen property tax or property liability insurance go up about 15%. Health insurance went up about 14%. Workers' compensation insurance has gone up 16%, and our PG&E costs have gone up 13%. So those, really hit all of our departments from police, parks, public works. It really hits those departments hard. We have some new items that also are impacting our budget. CalNet fiber optic cost, some new equipment to replace some of our really old equipment. And then we also have 2 budget rollovers that I wanted to highlight. The two new vehicles for the building division are still on back order. And so that $70,000 cost had to be rolled over into this fiscal year. And then the Monday Club chimney repair, we got about $57,000 from insurance. We had added that to this current year's budget, but we're going to need to roll that over into next year's budget as well. And so this just brings revenue and expense together. I wanted to, kind of highlight those 2 budget rollovers because once we take those 2 budget rollovers out, we have a $467 surplus for the general fund. And so again, this is just a summary. Our revenue outlook is flat with sales tax. Consumer spending is in a decline, even though inflation has gone up, and we've seen, some increase in sales tax during COVID. Now that all that COVID money is gone, consumers are spending less, and so we're seeing our sales tax decline. Expenditures are up. We've seen inflationary pressures far and wide. It's hitting everything from property insurance, benefits, supplies, utilities. And we're also having to replace equipment that we've had in service for 15, 20 years or more. And then finally, Measure E importance. So Measure E is projected to provide over $800,000 in support to the general fund, about $60,000 more than last year. And Measure E continues to maintain the increased safety personnel in parks and public work projects that Measure E has successfully funded over the past several years. And so to conclude with Measure E, the general fund is able to have a balanced budget, which is important. And so with that, I'll turn it over to the council for any questions. But that concludes my presentation.
Okay, any questions from council? Okay, open public comment. Anybody from the public like to speak? No? Okay, we'll close public comment. And
I was just going to say, a lot of the items that you brought up earlier in the year have come to roost, and it doesn't look like a rosy future, but we're looking forward to tackling it, but we'll see what happens. Thank you.
okay, we have two motions on this one. Does somebody want to make the first one?
I make a motion to close public hearing.
Okay. You have a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, second motion, all passes.
I'll make a motion to adopt Resolution 2024-13, read by title only.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion, second, roll call, please.
Resolution 2024-13, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Fortuna adopting the City of Fortuna's annual operating budget for fiscal year 2024-25. Councilmember Conley?
Aye.
Councilmember Mobley?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Johnson?
Yes.
Mayor Trent?
Yes. Okay, our next item is organic waste disposal ordinance revision.
Thank you, Mayor Trent. And really, I'm just bringing this back. We've done this a few times, but we're having ongoing delays with negotiating the franchise agreement, and also there's delays on trucks to be able to implement the organic waste recycling ordinance. So let me just run through this real quickly. Our staff is recommending that the council hold a public hearing to conduct the first reading and introduce ordinance 2024-770, revising chapter 8.14 to the Fortuna Municipal Code, covering organic waste disposal reduction regulations that implement and enforce CalRecycle organics regulations in SB 1383 from compliance, and changing the further out deadlines in that ordinance from January 1st, 2024 to July 1st, 2026. A little bit of background, SB 1383 was signed into law and the new regulations went into effect on January 1st, 2022. The law includes statewide targets to reduce the amount of organic waste disposed of in landfills, and the targets are included in the staff report. It also sets a goal to rescue at least 20% of the currently disposed of edible food by 2025 and redirect that food to people in need. There are many parts of SB 1383 that will take time and effort to develop and implement. The city completed an implementation plan in collaboration with the Humboldt Waste Management Authority and other jurisdictions of Humboldt County as a part of a regional effort. As a part of that effort was the development of a roadmap of how options might look to identify requirements of the various portions of the new regulations. The city's ordinance will require changes to the waste collection, recycling, and organic programs in the next few years to satisfy those requirements. Just a little bit of history of where we've done some other delays. Ordinance 2022-755 was adopted by the council on June 2nd to satisfy the city's requirement to adopt an enforceable ordinance, with the implementations delayed until January 1st, 2023. Subsequent to that, with ordinance 2022-757, we moved that date to July 1st, 2023, and then we moved them later to July 1st, 2024 with ordinance 2023-761. And currently, staff is still negotiating the franchise agreement with the city's waste hauler, Recology. We still expect to have this fairly soon, but we don't have agreement now. Additionally, even with a franchise agreement, there might not be a facility to be able to process the waste locally in Humboldt County. So the city assisted with some of the CalRecycle grant funds. We assisted HWMA to develop an application for upgrades to the transfer station to be able to accept that organic waste and then to be able to process it and then send that to an organics recycling facility. But the soonest the work would be done on that facility and we could haul organic waste would be July 2025. Furthermore, we've been informed that the soonest we could have trucks for organic waste collection in the region from Recology is 2026. So we've pushed this date out a few times. There's a long lead time both for the HWMA project to receive organic waste and for trucks with Recology. And so I apologize to the council for bringing this back so many times to delay it, but at this point I want to move it out to July 1st, 2026. One of the other reasons that I'm considering that, besides the limitations on being able to process the waste, one of the things we've been informed by Recology is that if we go to mandatory collection, which is one of the requirements of SB 1383, that there will be increases to solid waste and recycling rates within the city. And at this time, with wastewater rates coming in, with proposed ballot measures for taxes, and just overall seeing the increases that we're seeing in the for our customers and electricity and insurance and all those other costs, it seems like because we have the ability to delay to 2026, it seems prudent to do that at this time. The one thing that it could do is put the city in jeopardy with Cal Recycle. They could choose to take a more heavy hand on enforcement, but the message we're getting from Cal Recycle is that they are willing to be patient. They know about the physical limitations and the inability to get trucks, so it doesn't seem like that's something that's going to happen as a result of adopting these changes. But I just wanted to make the council aware. It seems like there's been a lot of pushback from local agencies on Cal Recycle. Again, they had over 4 years to put these rules in place and gave the city a very short period of time to implement them. And so what we're seeing right now is some of the hard work that's going to have to happen. It's just going to take more time. So with that, staff is recommending that the council conduct a first reading by title only of ordinance 2024-770. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Any questions from council? No? Okay, we'll open public comment. Any comments from the public? Seeing none, we'll close public comment. Back to council.
I make a motion to introduce and conduct a first reading by title only of ordinance 2024-770.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and second. Roll call, please.
Ordinance 2024-770, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Fortuna, California, amending Title 8, Health and Safety of the Fortuna Municipal Code by revising Chapter 8.14, Organic Reduction and Recycling Ordinance. Councilmember Conley?
Aye.
Councilmember Mobley?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Johnson?
Yes.
Mayor Trent?
Yes. Okay, our last item of business is Fortuna Business Improvement District Annual Report and Resolution of Intent regarding the annual levy. Staff report, please.
Thank you, Mayor Trent. And the reason I'm bringing back the annual report, the council approved this at the last council meeting, and I went back to the FBIT Advisory Committee, and I informed them of the council's direction at the last meeting when they accepted the annual report to not levy an additional fee and have it be zero, and then have to operate on the remaining funds that were left in the FBIT account. And the reason I'm bringing this item back, there's a few reasons, and I'll get into the notice of intent, but there's a couple of options, and I'll get into those in just a second. But some of the rules under the Fortuna Business Improvement District was established in 1990 under the Parking and Business Improvement Area Law of '89. Under this law, the council is required to adopt an annual resolution of intent for each fiscal year in which it levies an assessment. So that's why we're here tonight. The resolution must be adopted after the council reviews and approves the FBIT annual report. So that happened at the last regular city council meeting and on May 20th. And at that meeting, the annual report and at the May 20th meeting, the council elected to not levy an assessment when it contemplated the potential changes in the annual report. And let's see. So following that meeting, I met with the FBIT Advisory Committee and shared with them what the council's discussion was. The advisory committee recommended that the council reconsider its decision not to levy an assessment for the 2024-25 fiscal year, instead of levying a flat assessment of the $25. So one of the things that was mentioned in the staff report is that the advisory committee, in going back to the advisory committee had concerns that if in the future an assessment was to be levied, and that if the council went to zero this year and then back up, say, to $25 next year, it would be very confusing for our businesses that are being assessed the tax to see it go from our sliding scale, which we have now, down to zero, and then potentially 25 in the future. And so what the advisory committee recommended, they did advise the council that they thought because there is potential in the future for FBID continue, and for there to be an assessment that if that assessment was to made, that it should be the $25 flat fee that staff recommended. And so although I understand the council's direction, and this isn't necessarily staff's recommendation, I wanted to leave the council that as an option. So so accordingly, with that option, the council may choose not to amend the annual report that was approved at the last meeting, thereby confirming its decision not to levy an assessment for the 2024-2025 fiscal year, or amend the annual report and recommend the flat rate assessment of $25 per business that was recommended by the advisory committee. If the council chooses the former, the council should, which is no levy, the council should adopt resolution number 15A, which is attached to the staff report to confirm its decision not to levy an annual assessment for the upcoming fiscal year. And by adopting that resolution, the council may in subsequent years reimpose the levy in the manner required by law. Alternatively, if the council desires to amend the annual report, it should do so by a regular motion as recommended below. After amending the annual report, the council should then adopt resolution 15B attached to the staff report and give notice of the council's intention to levy the assessment for the upcoming fiscal year and setting a public hearing for June 17th to consider whether a protest exists. The resolution of intent is the first procedural step required to levy the annual assessment. The resolution of intent provides notice of a public hearing to occur on June 17th, at which time business owners may submit written protest as more particularly set forth and in the resolution. So pursuant to section 36534 of the Streets and Highways Code, the annual resolution of intent must do the following things. It must declare the intention of the city council to change the boundaries of the parking improvement area or any benefit zone within the area in its annual if the annual report proposes a change, declare the intention of the city council to levy and collect assessments within the parking and business improvement area for the fiscal year stated in the resolution, describe the proposed improvements and activities authorized by the ordinance, refer to the parking area and business improvement area by name and indicate the location of the area, and refer to the report on file with the clerk for a full detailed description of the improvements and activities to be provided for that fiscal year, and fix a time and place for a public hearing. In the staff report, there's a summary of what the previous assessment would generate, and there's also a summary of the financial situation of FBID, and essentially the anticipated amount of funds that will be remaining in the FBID account are approximately $17,726. I confirmed with our finance director it might be slightly higher than that, but there are also some lingering expenditures that may have to happen before the end of the year. So for all intents and purposes, there's approximately $17,000 that would be carried over and be able to use by businesses next year. If the council elects not to levy an assessment for the upcoming fiscal year, it's anticipated that the bid will exhaust all its available funds and may not be able to fund activities in the following year. Unless the assessment is reinstated. If the council elects to levy a flat assessment of $25 per business, it would generate approximately $16,500. What staff is currently thinking, again, we spent a lot of time on this on the annual report, and just generally the businesses in the city really aren't, there's not a great deal of appreciation for the efforts of the former incarnation of the bid to make an effort to do business improving events. There really hasn't been a lot of appreciation for a lot of the efforts that have been made on behalf of the businesses by the city-led bid, and really the one group that seems very consistent on wanting to bid is downtown merchants. They're very active, they organize their own events, but they prefer to see that funding of the assessment to be used by those that core area rather than something being done for them. And so what our thought is, if the council proceeds and they don't levy an assessment, that we'll have those funds, we could see how it goes this year, but we want to do a one-page sheet and really just let business owners who have been assessed, let them know what funding is available, what they can do to request that from the business improvement district, and then have reduce the meeting schedule for the business improvement district from monthly to quarterly to reduce the staff workload, because there really is a lot fewer funds being distributed. We won't have an employee, and really let business groups come to the city and say and come up with those ideas and do those projects that they would like to do with the remaining funds that we have. So I think really at the end of all of this, I think it's really a question of, does the city see this moving forward in the future? And I think that, again, the advisory committee, I think they didn't want to confuse businesses by seeing it go to zero, then maybe having assessment in the future that goes up to $25 and having that, bounce around. They thought that would be confusing. And so that was the purpose of their recommendation. Staff's recommendation at this point, I think, is to go with the council's previous indication as a part of the annual report. And just as I've been thinking about it a little more, and our finance director might have some insight in this too, is again, the downtown merchants are the one group that seem to really value that assessment money and what that can do. But maybe what we could look at next year is reducing the business improvement district just to the downtown, and those businesses, the city council can consider an assessment that just benefits downtown instead of dragging the entire city into it, which there's not a lot of participation right now outside of downtown. So that's my thought for next year, and with that, I'll turn it back to council.
Okay, any questions from council?
I'd like to hear if the advisory council representative to FBID has been to a meeting, and you got a sense of what they...
Go ahead.
I'll point out that our chair, Fred Robinson, is here too,
Yeah,
so he may have some comments. You might want to call on him as well.
Last week, and I was going to ask Fred if you wanted to come up and kind of give some of the input from the other committee members. They felt very strongly that we should at least keep the $25 flat fee, just so funding is there. But I don't know that they understand, and I don't want to say they as in like a collective, but I don't think some of the members understood that even though a group asks for $5,000, they're going to get $5,000, that we can piecemeal it together and see what can work and have enough funds to allocate different areas. And I think the $17,000 is enough to do that in 1 year, but I don't know what Fred thinks.
I actually had a clarification, Merritt, because we did ask for clarification at the meeting. Were you able to determine if the core area assessments are still allocated to those core area assessments, or if they could be used as the general, that 17,000 is for the citywide, or if Strongs Creek and Redwood Village have to maintain for those?
Yeah, and I'll let Aaron. So just the question that we received from the advisory committee was how much of that $17,000 is designated for citywide and can be used throughout the entire city, and is there portions of that are set aside for Strongs Creek and Redwood Village or downtown separately? And so I'll let our finance director answer that question.
Yeah, so per the municipal code, 62% of the core area has to go back to be used in that core area. Now, we don't necessarily have to give it to another organization. We can spend it through FBID. And so we've kept kind of, a calculation or, a general ledger of, how much we got from Redwood Village, how much we got from Strongs Creek, how much we got from downtown. Downtown has their own nonprofit, so we were able to give the exact amount that we got to them per an agreement. So we don't have any downtown merchant funds in the FBID funds. There are about half of the Redwood Village funds still available, which is about $3,000, and then just about $2,000 for the Strongs Creek. So there's about $5,000, but there are additionally some salary savings because the FBID administrator, we projected that her service would go through June. However, she was done last week. So there's about $3,000 to $4,000 in pay and benefit savings that we weren't really anticipating having through the end of this month. So I would say there's still there will be about, at the end of June, about 16,000 to 17,000, depending on certain things from just the general portion, and then there'll be about 3,000 for specifically Redwood Village and 2,000 specifically to Strongs Creek.
And I'll just mention, there wasn't much dispute from the advisory committee about the desire for a bid administrator or other third parties to do work on behalf of business development. Really, there was no argument about that. It just seemed like there's not a lot of appreciation for those efforts. It's really, the only question is, should we keep these funds going to our businesses to do things on their own? So I think the decision to not have an administrator and incur those expenses and really to open it up for the remaining funds or what would be generated annually to those businesses, there really wasn't a lot of dispute. And I did walk downtown a couple of times, and I've talked to our merchants, and ones that I've received opposition from or disappointment, and they're like, hey, we agree with what you presented. I presented those facts with the annual report to council. I presented them to the advisory committee, but it just seems like there's a lack of interest on seeing the bid continue the way it is, with a duplicative effort in some senses of the chamber, where you're promoting business in the city and then just organizing events on behalf of our businesses or trying to do things. So it seems like the events that are most successful in the city are businesses taking that on and doing that themselves and looking to the assessment money for seed money, but not being responsible for the activities. And so that's how we're going to pull back this current year, with or without an assessment.
I would echo everything Merritt said. I do think that from the advisory board, our question was just going all the way to zero, being confusing to business owners and feeling like all of a sudden later on, are we just adding a tax back on to something? Whereas if it's a set fee, it's pretty standard, and that's just the change that was made. And it's easy to say we went from a sliding schedule to a set fee, but to go to zero and then back up to 25 in a year, if there's no money left over, might be confusing for business owners throughout the city. I will also say that within our report, we did get a request for about $12,000 for the coming fiscal year. It was all for the downtown merchants, but in one of our discussions was that might wipe out most of the budget if it was all approved to that one area. Again, we did discuss that it could be doled out over time and not all there, but it also in the future could not be, and there's no seed money for any future festivals that could be used for the city. And we've heard reports throughout the time of seed money that for Hops and Humboldt and other different organizations to get them up and running that are now wonderful festivals that bring a lot of traffic to the city. So we were very diligent in our analyzing of the budget, but that was really the big discussion, was should it go to 0 or 25?
Thank you, Fred. And I appreciate Chair Robinson's done a really nice job with the advisory committee and ushering that along and creating that dialogue. So I appreciate you being here tonight, Fred, for that. And I will just say that there are other funds in the past. The city's contributed up to $60,000, and the budget that was just approved by council has $20,000 in there for community promotion. So if we choose, and one of the things our city clerk's office has been interested in is if we want to continue to add more banners or different banners and move those further downtown to some of the poles where we don't have now, we still will have some of the ability to do that. We will have a little bit of money to be able to use from the city side that doesn't go through the bid and community promotion if we do want to support new activities or events as well.
So we could make that like a budget line item to do for community events?
And it could be
in the future. I don't mean for this budget, but
and right now it's under community promotion, and so I think any significant, if there was expenditures, it's one of those things where I wouldn't feel comfortable just giving somebody $5,000 or $10,000 for a new event. It's something that we would bring to council, but that money, $20,000, is there and available for city use to promote the community.
Okay, and I think, Fred, because Merritt did mention that at our meeting, but I don't think all of the committee members took that in. I mean, was it something that was clear to you at the time? Because it's $17,000, but there's potentially another up to $20,000 that could be utilized.
I do think that was discussed, and I know Merritt did mention it. Now, I will say, I think how that $20,000 could be allocated and who would allocate it was unclear to the advisory board. So thank you for that clarification.
Okay.
One of the things that comes to mind also, besides going from 0 to 25, is people that are going from, say, prior paying $10 and now they're paying $25, and people that were paying $300 are now paying $25, and how that pencils out and everything.
And Merritt did mention that, because the majority of our businesses do pay the $11.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So there was some numbers in the staff report. 26% of our businesses pay the lowest amount of $11, and over 75% of our businesses pay under $100. So, had the original levy been been followed through with the recommendation from the advisory committee, nearly 76% of our businesses would have seen an increase. And again, you know, a lot of it's anecdotal from our finance department, and you heard from Rachel Henry at the last meeting on May 20th. Just a lot of people ask questions when they come to the finance counter. Why am I getting paid? What's the city doing here? And it's not just this year. It's been when FBID was a nonprofit. It just, again, it just seems like there's not a lot of interest of businesses outside our core areas of coming to the bid and wanting the city, or in the prior incarnation, a nonprofit, to do things on their behalf.
Yeah, I'm kind of thinking that I like the zero, because there's what I've heard in the past from people that have gotten bid things that don't have any real support from bid is, what am I paying that for? There's lots of businesses out there that, let's say, an engineer drafting firm, or, you know, a small little business that's working out of their home, a catering company, where it's really not affecting. I really think we just take this back next year and really have a more open conversation of what businesses do we want to try to levy this on, and then the ones that will actually kind of benefit from bid, and reevaluate that fee schedule next year, I think.
I will agree with that. And it might be just a downtown, you know, levy, and so they can keep theirs. But the majority of the city doesn't want to pay the bid, and there's going to be more of a fit going from 11 to 25 than, you know, than going from 0 back to 25, I think. And I don't think we should do the whole city, you know, and we can talk about that next year, but I think we need to go with what we decided. So do we have a motion from council?
I'll make a motion to adopt resolution number 15A and read by title only.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. And is this a roll call? Okay, roll call, please.
Resolution 2024-15, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Fortuna declaring its intention not to levy an annual assessment for 2024-2025 fiscal year for the Fortuna Business Improvement District. Councilmember Conley?
Aye.
Councilmember Mobley?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Johnson?
Yes.
Mayor Trent?
Yes. Okay, moving on to city manager's report.
Thank you, Mayor Trent. Just a brief recap of our upcoming meeting schedule. Our next regular council meeting is on June 17th, and then at 6:00 p.m. And I will say that we are intending to have our July 1st meeting also at 6:00 p.m. Sometimes there's discussion of canceling meetings, but I'm not at a point where I can recommend canceling any of our meetings yet, because we have a number of budget-related items and other items related to wastewater rates that, until we see that schedule, we're anticipating having all of our council meetings at this point through June and July. Our next planning commission is on June 11th at 6:00 p.m. Our next Measure E meeting is on September 17th, so quite a ways out there. Our next Roanoke Community Recreation and Park District meeting is on June 5th. And then our next Fortuna Business Improvement District meeting is on June 25th. And I just have a couple of things to report. One of them is really fun. I didn't attend, but our Parks Director, I don't know if any of our council members went, but they had the Forest Moon Festival last weekend at Roanoke Park, and I saw a lot of pictures, and it looked like a great time. And I just want to recognize our Parks and Recreation staff for joining in with the countywide effort on the Forest Moon Festival and having a movie here that they showed in the park out in the Redwoods. So I'm glad the weather cooperated. It didn't rain on that night, and I was really happy that we were able to put together that program and participate. I have a lot of items I could report, but I think I'm just going to leave it at that.
Okay. Any future agenda items? None? Okay, we'll go to city council reports. Councilmember Conley?
No report.
Councilmember Mobley?
No report.
Mayor Pro Tem Johnson?
A small report. Saw a great presentation at the chamber meeting on the rodeo and what, over time, what it's done for the community, how the participation rate has come up, how highly the outside acts that come in regard the rodeo and Fortuna and what happens here. And I thought it was a great meeting, great discussion, and looking forward to a good rodeo. That's my report.
Okay, that covered part of my report. And then my other report was Lemonade Day. I actually went out with, one of the officers also went. We went to visit all the lemonade stands in Fortuna. I took them all a little business license that had a cute little lemonade border. It was a lemonade business license for the city of Fortuna. We got such a good response from all of them, and they were so excited to see us, and it was just really, really enjoyable talking to these little business owners on what they were doing, and I think it was really, really good that we actually went out and did that. And they were kind of like when they saw the police car drive up, you could see what they were kind of, why is the police here? But they were all really happy, so that was very enjoyable. And that's the end of my report. And so now we are going to adjourn to closed session, conference with labor negotiator, city negotiator, city manager Merritt Perry, employees organization, Fortuna Police Employees Association, in accordance with section 54957.6 of the government code, and conference with labor negotiator, city manager Merritt Perry, employees association, Fortuna Employees Association, and unrepresented management group in accordance to 54957.6 of the government code. And is there any public comment on closed session? Seeing none, we'll close session. And do we have a motion?
No, I need to recuse myself from item A, please.
Okay,
And then I'll make a motion to adjourn to closed session.
okay.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, meeting adjourned.